Hi, this is your host Sapna Bhartia, and welcome to another episode of TFR Let's Talk. And today we have with us once again Valentina Alaria, Senior Director of Product of Tanzu Application Platform at Vmware. Valentina, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having us again. Good to see
Yeah,
you.
and today we are going to talk about Tanzu Application Platform version 1.2, which was released a few weeks ago. It's always good to refresh memories of our viewers to just quickly talk about what role is Tanzu Application Platform playing in today's cloud native, cloud centric world.
Absolutely. So Tanzu Application Platform is a product that we launched earlier this year, in fact, in January of 2022. And it's very much a product that is targeted at application teams. So we want to make sure that we can help application developers and application operators satisfy the business requirements of rapid iteration and rapid business value generation with a set of modular and composable tools that supports them, these application teams throughout the entire journey from ideation all the way to an application running in production. So this is what Tanzu Application Platform is. It's all about.
Can you also talk about, since the version 1.2 was released recently, what are the new features, what are the new updates that application developers will be looking forward to?
Yeah, there's quite a bit that went into 1.2. So let me try to break it into a few different categories. One of the features that I'm most excited about, or category of features I'm most excited about, actually has to do with our ability to install Tanzu Application Platform across a variety of environments. So one great example of these features is the work that we've been doing in partnership with the team over at Amazon, the AWS team, to make simpler and easier to deploy Tanzu Application Platform on top of an Amazon managed Kubernetes cluster. And so the idea there is that we have published what we call a quick start, which is very much a one click or a small number of clicks that a user can leverage to get Tanzu Application Platform running on top of an EKS cluster. This is great because it enables users to get started more easily. It takes care of a lot of the configuration and somewhat complexity that comes with installing a product as rich and made of many components as Tanzu Application Platform on top of an AWS environment. So this is really fantastic. It's something that it's quite important for us, and we're seeing quite a bit of interest in the customer. Now the other sort of end of the spectrum is actually for customers that are looking at much more controlled and locked-on environments. And so we've been doing some work to start bringing in what we call an MVP, or minimum viable product, for air gap deployments. And so the idea there is that whether it's it's federal government type of environment or any highly regulated environments where they may not have internet connectivity or the ability to just connect to the repository where we have Tanzu Application Platform and download the images and continuously update. And so we provide this ability to deploy in air gap type of environments. So those two have to do, again, as I said, just installation, which you may feel is not the most attractive feature out there, but it's of course really important. It really helps with like getting started and deploying this product in environments that matter for the customers. Now, from a feature richness perspective, we've been doing a whole sort of interesting things. Again, in that collaboration with the AWS team, we understand a lot of customers want to be able to leverage native components of that ecosystem. And so it's not just about being able to deploy on top of AWS, but it's about being able to leverage components like ECR, the Elastic Container Registry that AWS provides, or being able to bind an application, so leverage as part of your application definition and then application lifecycle, a native service like the Relational Database Service, or RDS, provided by AWS itself. And more broadly, as we think about Tanzu Application Platform, you've heard me talk about its modularity and composability as key features. And we truly believe that customers should be able to, of course, use what comes out of the box with Tanzu Application Platform. I think when we met last, I mentioned this idea of batteries included. But the idea is that these batteries are swappable. And so in 1.2, in tab 1.2, we actually did quite a bit of work to start demonstrating more and more of this swappability. So it's not just about being able to use the ecosystem through container integration or service integration, but it's also about the ability to swap some of the very much core components of the solution. And so in 1.2, we started demonstrating that we can leverage Jenkins as a CI component, for example, or something that I know our customers have been really excited about is being able to use Sneak as a scanner. And so these are all, again, the ability to just swap and replace these components that come out of the box natively, and being able to use tools that already exist in the customer's landscape, in the customer ecosystem. We believe it's quite important that we meet customers where they are. I have quite a few more exciting features, but just curious, if you have any questions or thoughts on what I just shared. Another category of features I wanted to talk about in 1.2 is just additional richness of capabilities for our developers and application teams at large. So one interesting things that we're doing is, as you know, we have had integration with IDEs like VS Code since inception of Tanzu Application Platform. And in 1.2, we integrate support, we add support for IntelliJ. So this is just another IDE. And this is quite important because, as you know, developers have preferences. And so we want to make sure that we meet them once more where they are in the environment that it's familiar to them in their daily iteration process. Other great feature that became available in 1.2 is what we call application SSO, or single sign-on. And so this is really a feature that makes it very straightforward and simple for developers to manage access to that application, for end users. And so this, really secures the workloads as they run on the platform itself. And these, authentication and authorization can be federated with external identity providers, of course. Quite a few small things also happening for the application operators. We don't, of course, want to forget about this persona. We continue to refine that application operator experience, making it simpler to use the supply chain, making it simpler to get started with what it's available out of the box, but also being able to, customize it. And so really bring in more automation at the supply chain level, bring in GitOps practices into the supply chain itself, be able to trigger steps of the supply chain through practices that are common at the teams level, and also just helping folks understand more about the supply chain. It's a new concept in a way that we've been introducing with Tanzu Application Platform, and so quite a bit of work that continues to go into our graphical user interface, which, as you probably recall, is built on Backstage, the open source project. And so as we continue to build plugins for our Tanzu Application Platform GUI and for Backstage at large, we continue to really focus on providing clear visibility on the supply chain, on the scanning and vulnerabilities, and really helping application operators get the most out of the platform. So yeah, this is a bit of an overview of what we've been bringing to our users in 1.2. Our customers are quite excited. Many of them have gotten their hands on this release already. They've been validating and testing and providing their feedback, and so far it's been just overwhelmingly very, very positive. Many of them are really excited about the features that we released, and they continue to make good use of them within their environment.
Excellent. Thanks for explaining, giving it details about all the features there. Yes, of course, I do have a couple of questions. Number one is that you talked about AWS, EKS. We live in a multi-cloud hybrid cloud world. So what about other clouds? What about on-prem?
Yeah, so everything that I've been describing, beside the AWS specific integrations, of course, it's available for users across any environment. This is really one of the core principles for Tanzu Application Platform. So the idea is that we bring this consistent developer experience and this consistent consistent, application operator experience across any of those environments. So you can deploy Tanzu Application Platform on top of an AKS cluster, on an EKS cluster, the GK cluster, or on-prem on top of TKG or other Kubernetes distributions. But we do believe, of course, that for customers, that are potentially all in on a specific environment, it makes sense to have some dedicated integrations. And so far in 1.2, we've been really focusing on AWS integrations. At the same time, while this is a separate product, it's worth mentioning that there is a lot of common components between Tanzu Application Platform and the offering that we've been building in collaboration with the Azure team. It's called Azure, ASA, Azure Spring Apps. This will need to be edited for sure. The offering that we've been building in collaboration with the Azure team, Azure Spring Apps Enterprise, that shares a lot of common components with Tanzu Application Platform. And ASA Enterprise is actually a managed service, and of course takes advantage of all the native Azure services and components. And so you can see how we're building a lot of different choices for users, whether they're all in the AWS ecosystem or all in on the Azure ecosystem, or to your point, looking at building more of a hybrid strategy for their environments.
With the whole cloud native movement, we were assuming that we are moving towards the world of DevOps, but the fact is that it's about specialization. There will always be folks who have a specialized expertise in certain area. There will always be, we can, if you use the word, soft silos there. So how do you see when we look at VMware or Tanzu, the teams of operators versus developers are still there, or do you look at the whole organization and it doesn't matter where they are in their journey, they should be able to leverage Tanzu Application Platform?
That's an excellent question, and I can share how we're thinking about personas within our organization, and as we design the product. You're absolutely right in that every organization looks a little bit different. And so instead of thinking about hard coding roles and thinking about the developer or the application operator or even the platform operator, we usually think about jobs to be done. And so a job to be done, it's really a task or an outcome that we're trying to achieve within our organization. And this could be actually something that different personas or different roles or different titles take on, depending on how the organization it's structured and what it looks like. And so for us, by thinking about a job to be done, we want to make sure that that job to be done has the right components to support it, the best possible experience, and that can be taken on flexibly by different personas. And so it's less about building a product for a developer and then building a separate product for an operator, and it's more about making sure that that workflow is supported and that job or set of jobs to be done can be effectively executed through this product. So absolutely, and we very much see organizations where someone is wearing both a developer and the DevSecOps hat, and organizations where you have much more clearly defined like security persona and operator persona and developer persona. And as such, we want to make sure that we can support each and every one of those.
Let's look at the application developers, especially in the cloud native world. I mean, cloud native is not a place, it's a process, it's the way of doing things kind of
Yes.
thing. The challenges have kind of changed, and it's also very complicated if we don't even want to look in the direction of Kubernetes, all the knobs that you have to turn there. So what are the pain points that you see developers are facing, their app developers, that you're also trying to help solve through this release, or in general with TAP or Tanzu Application Platform?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'd like to talk about it a bit more in terms of the experience that I'm seeing from one of our customers. They're a very large retailer, and they have a very large number of developers, as you can imagine, and they were actually sharing that they see a huge discrepancy of how fast or how quickly a developer can roll out a new application or build a new application, whether they're a junior developer or brand new to the organization, and as a result, brand new to Kubernetes, or if they're a senior developer. And they actually see a 5x difference between these two, sort of tenures, which is a huge difference. And so we've been, working very closely with them and trying to understand what is the root cause of this 5x, right? And it's very much, the obvious things that you can imagine in terms of just like, hey, this is like new technology, the complexity of Kubernetes, but it's also really about not being able to effectively codify the best practices of an organization. And so one of the things that we've been, really doing and helping organizations with Tanzu Application Platform is to create and codify these best practices and templates. So one of the most beloved features of Tanzu Application Platform is this notion of accelerators or templates, which are really a way for organizations to say, hey, I have a set of expertise, SMEs, right? My architects, my senior developers, they understand how we build applications, how we capture best practices, how we think about a specific language or class of apps, and we can codify this into these templates, these accelerators. Now, those accelerators can be made available to more junior developers that are just joining the organization. And at that point, they can take advantage of the same knowledge that these senior developers have had. And this is truly game changing, right? So it's really about this ability to sort of broadly capture the knowledge, the know-how that exists within an organization. And then also to your point earlier about multi-cloud. Multi-cloud ends up being a complexity that it's lands in the lap of the developer, where they're trying to figure out, okay, now I need to deploy this application to an AKS cluster, an EKS cluster. What is going to change? And so we really sort of step in to create this abstraction there to remove that complexity, so that the application should not be even aware of what the platform is running on and the infrastructure, and a lot of that abstraction is sort of handled there. And then maybe the third important point, which we hear a lot, is this notion of shifting left, right? And so organizations are really looking at shifting left automation, or looking at shifting left security. Now, if shift left without having the right tools in place, this just translates into additional complexity for the developers, right? This means that the developer now needs to understand automation. The developer now needs to understand security. And so some of the things that we're doing there, which you're possibly already aware of, is truly the ability to build automation into Tanzu Application Platform, the ability to build security into a Tanzu Application Platform in a way that it's completely transparent to the developer. So the developer, it's building the application, writing code. The supply chain, as it's defined by the operator, again, whether it's a persona or simply someone that it's wearing that hat, will automatically take care of applying security, for example, and scanning the code or scanning the image as that organization believes is appropriate for that application that is being built. So these are some of the, I would say, high points of complexity that developers face, and this is at least what we hear from the many customers we work with today.
You talked about supply chain, and when you were explaining supply chain in the beginning, I had this question in mind. That was because we are kind of talking a lot about software supply chain to improve the hygiene, but the challenge with supply chain is that where does the buck stop? Who is actually responsible? The vendor, the SaaS provider, or as you say, the personas. So it really doesn't matter who you are. Developers are writing code. It should be part of your development pipeline itself. So, and you're talking about making it easier and more visibility. So talk a bit about how is Tanzu Application Platform making it easier and simpler for them. So irrespective of what is their persona, what hat they are wearing, security is not going to be someone else's problem, or it's not going to be an afterthought.
Yeah. So the way to think about the supply chain and how we make it a core of Tanzu Application Platform is that we have this automation engine, orchestration engine that really understands all the different steps and components throughout the process. And now we give some what we call out-of-the-box supply chains, which are really ways of describing what these steps of that path to production should look like. And we give them a few out of the box so that users don't have to create them to begin with. But of course, we expect organizations to be able to define their path to production. And so as you create this supply chain, you can define that, hey, my first step is going to be, I'm going to watch changes on this repo. And then as changes happen there, I'm going to run some CI. And then I'm going to run some, code scanning, and then I'm going to build an image with my build service, and then I'm going to run some image scanning, and then I'm going to apply some deployment strategy to deploy to my target cluster. And these are going to look quite different if this is a dev cluster or if that's actually my, production cluster that I'm targeting. Now, because you have this choreographer, this supply chain that understands all these necessary steps, it's not really up to the user to have to figure out like, oh, now I have my code. What needs to happen here? The supply chain automatically watches changes to the code and will kick in, whether it's CI, scanning, and all the additional components. So it's really about automation, and it's about having the right persona define what the path to production looks like, and making that transparent to the persona that it's responsible for example, writing code. So it's not their concern, but it automatically sort of kicks in and happens. Now, the supply chain, it's a very rich concept, but in a nutshell, it's really the ability to once more capture the best practice of your path to production and then customize them for the needs of different teams. This is another very important point, and it's more about complexity for the operators, where they often find themselves having to support different line of businesses and having to create a lot of snowflakes of what this path to production looks like for different line of businesses or different teams. And so the supply chains allows them to do it in a way that it's consistent and yet customizable. So it's quite a powerful concept, and one that we believe will be quite game changing.
Let's talk a bit about the Tanzu Mission Control Cluster feature. Talk a bit about what it is, and once again, the theme is today is making things easier for developers. So how does that help developers?
Yeah, so really, this is about, of course, a completely different product, which is Tanzu Mission Control, and Tanzu Mission Control it's very much supporting that platform operator persona that it's responsible for creating the underlying environment on top of what which developers and application operators operate, whether with Tanzu Application Platform or a platform of their choice. And so a lot of the concepts that I was describing earlier in terms of value of automation and operations for the application layer very much apply at the cluster management layer. And so a lot of what Tanzu Mission Control is doing here with the GitOps integrations is to allow for this platform operator persona to define the desired end state of a cluster, its configuration, the namespaces, and everything that needs to be deployed in the cluster. And then to use GitOps solutions to automatically apply this desired end state to the cluster itself. So instead of having to go to the GUI or to the CLI or to manually go and configure each individual cluster, you can now sort of use the same GitOps principles used on your application lifecycle to actually manage the configuration desired end state for the cluster. So we believe this is something that will really help scaling their Kubernetes environments, manage these Kubernetes environments better. It's in an environment where you have a larger number, and as a result, become much more responsive to the needs of the application teams, and specifically, of course, of the needs of the developers.
Valentina, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk about this release. And of course, I'll share those insights, the challenges that application developers face and how you folks are helping them. So thanks for sharing those insights. And I would love to have you back on the show. Hopefully we'll see each other at the upcoming Vmware event as well. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, looking forward to see you again, hopefully in person.